Hi everyone, so I'm doing my John Maxwell today and I'm going on to the Law of Victory, Day 2. The leadership thought for today is victory is possible despite impossible circumstances. Every leader will face a deck stacked against him. And this was true of Josiah. When he started his reign, everything seemed to be against him. He was only 8 years old when he became a king. And we see that in some of the Chinese leaders today. They are very, very young leaders. And it was true of Queen Elizabeth as well when she became queen. She was young, not 8 years old, but she was young. So they have a lot of responsibility placed on their shoulders at a young age. And then the second point, he had a horrible family heritage. So his legacy was filled with pain. He didn't come from a family where he could say, oh, I have a wonderful family. I have all this going in my favor. He didn't have that. He had a grandfather who was corrupt, more corrupt than the evil Canaanites God had driven from the promised land. And his father Amon followed Manasseh's example. So Josiah had no godly heritage to draw upon. Normally, people have role models. We have people in our lives, in our communities, in our families that we can follow, that we can say, okay, my mother did this or my father did this, and we model our lives on that, wanting to be as good as them or better than them or godly people. He didn't have that. So there was an absence of a positive role model for Josiah. Not only did the kings who preceded him fail to provide good modeling for him, but there appeared to be no other leaders present in Jerusalem who could guide and direct him. So it was a very lonely path for him. Jeremiah didn't begin his ministry until 14 years after Josiah ascended to the throne. So by then this young king had already swept the entire nation clean of idols and altars to false gods. He inherited a country that was in a miserable spiritual condition, and the temple in Jerusalem would have been a dramatic representation of where the people were spiritually. God's house was in ruins. So this is not giving us a very favorable picture of where is this victory going to come from. The people of his day had gone their own way. They wanted nothing to do with God, and as a result, they had never experienced his blessing or spiritual renewal. If the house of God was in ruin, they had no desire or expectation to repair the damage. They were quite happy because their lives were going the way they wanted them to go. So why should they be bothered about God's house? But Josiah let none of that stop him. His greatest desire was to dedicate himself wholeheartedly to God and win the people over to him as well. And he did it. He got rid of the idols in the nation. He repaired God's temple and returned the ark to it. And in the process, the Hebrews rediscovered the book of the law, which led to widespread renewal of their dedication to God. So his leadership is summarized in 2 Chronicles 34-33. Josiah removed all the abominations from the country that belonged to the children of Israel, and made all who were present in Israel diligently serve the Lord their God. All his days they did not depart from following the Lord God of their fathers. So it doesn't really matter what kind of circumstances leaders face or how many obstacles they must overcome. Victory is always possible. But first, we have to put our trust in God, and we have to face ourselves. That's what we have to do. So the question for reflection is, in what impossible circumstances have you accepted defeat? Because there's that old saying, if you think you are defeated, you are. And so our thinking, our faith thinking determines that. And we don't have to have the best role models. We don't have to have the best faith leaders in our communities. There was one time I was making a trip with my mother, and we were going to America on the bus. She had booked her ticket and I had booked mine. I wanted her to come with me. I said, book our tickets together. I'll come with you or you come with me. She said, no, I'm going on my bus and you go on your bus. I don't want to travel with you. So I was like, okay, that's fine if that's what you want. So I met her at the Union Station downtown. And then from there we went to the Greyhound subway. And she went on her bus and I went on mine. But while we were standing there were these two ladies that came up to talk to us. And they had seen me wearing my cross, my crucifix. And they said, oh, are you Christians? So we said, yes, we are. Why? And this girl started telling us about this Pastor Prince Michael and how he had abused them, sexually abused them. He got them into his church and he lured them, basically promising them that he'll help them financially because they were basically destitute. And then how when he got them in there, he abused them and he hurt them. So she was asking, what church do I go to? And I said, oh, I'm Catholic. I don't go to other churches outside. And she's like, oh, we had to run away from there. And it was so hard. Wherever we went, he found us. And then we parted company. And they went their way and I went mine. But you get good leaders and bad leaders everywhere. And my mom was saying, this type of thing happens. I said, yeah, you see, I told you. Then she's like, oh, I should have booked my ticket with you. I said, well, it's too late now. The buses are full. You have to go on your bus and I have to go on mine. So we can only advise people and we can only try to help them so far. After that, if they don't want to listen, it's up to them. But for us, we don't have to have the best role models. We don't have to have the best people who set the best example for us. We can do it by following God's laws and by following God's teaching, by praying at home, by doing the simple things that God asks us to do, and by dreaming big. God doesn't tell us to dream small. He tells us to dream big. I joined this St. Teresa of Lisieux. I didn't join them, but I used to go to the Newman Center. And then one mass when we were there, Father Peter Taroni said, I made a list of names and I'd like you to come forward when I call your name and I'm going to give you this brown scapular. So we were basically put under that, there's a term they use, I can't remember it, but we were put into this blessing that is received from wearing the brown scapular, and that comes from the Carmelite tradition with the sisters and St. Teresa of Lisieux. So that's how I started getting an interest in that. And then it always seems to be with the Americans first. I went to a retreat here in Niagara with the Carmelite sisters. But when I found them online, I found them through the Americans. So I used to join in the prayers, and I do get their daily updates. And they had sent me this. See if I can. Well, I can't turn it round, but they had sent me this rose. The silk rose. Now they ask for a donation, but they sent me this quite a long time ago because I was joining in the prayers and everything. And then later on, they told me, oh, go to the Canadian one because now they kind of separating it. So I did that, but I started with the Americans. And then even with the Marians, it was with the Americans. So a lot of my connections are with the Americans. I went to theology school here, and I helped the Jesuits here and there, but I find that the Americans, they'll send me things, they'll get me involved in prayers, they'll ask me to help with actions they want me to take. So I have more involvement there. Here I just read at the church. That's all I do. But yeah, we can get involved in different things. We can learn more on our own, and we can be an example for others. And people go through great hardships, like even people that left Ireland or left places like us. We left Africa, Zimbabwe. People go through great hardships, but somehow you find that spirit that says, I want to live, I want to thrive, I want to be successful. And you put your faith in God and you carry on. So Elvis's father went to prison because he forged a check, because they didn't have food to eat. So some of us come from very, very poor families, but that doesn't mean that we can't dream the American dream, or we can't dream of that rags to riches story. We can. And why shouldn't we? That's why we study, we go to school, we better ourselves, we get an education, and we set the example for others. Elvis didn't kick his father out and say, oh, you went to prison, I don't want you, don't come back here. He didn't do that. He set a very good example for people, and he loved people, even those that betrayed him. Today is also the feast of Saint Hildegard in our Catholic Church, and I read a little bit of this book today. So she's one of our great teachers in the church, and she was somebody that was rejected by her family, and she didn't have a very positive, the movies and that don't portray her very nicely, but she had great insights into the spiritual realm, into the use of gems and stones and all the things about life and the heavenly realms. And I saw today they're finding things about how even after a person dies, certain parts of the body start regenerating, because the soul carries on and different parts of it start to regenerate. But without that oxygen, without that air, without that life, it dies after a while. But we are born into eternal life, so that's what we believe. And I'm sure one day people will find the proof that they need. They won't just need the Shroud of Turin. But it is out there. The truth is there. But yeah, that's what I read today. And I miss my work. It's boring for me sitting at home looking for jobs every day, going out. All the rejection letters, rejection emails. But who knows? I have to just keep on applying. It's a numbers game, like they say. And yeah, probably will not get the chance to work for the Americans again. Those opportunities don't come up here in Canada too often. Normally you'll end up working for Canadian companies, but I worked for them for 5 years, so I had lots of training, and hopefully there'll be an American company that will take me. But we'll see what happens. So yeah, I read this today, and I think one of the things that we can do is, when we're going through hard times, when we're going through difficulties, aside from protecting our hearts, like Our Lady told us to treasure things in our hearts, we can look at the things we have. We can be people who are generous. We can fill our hearts with gratitude. We can be content. We can let go of things that are not going to help us. And we can be kind. We can be people who are people of abundance for others out of the little that we have. So I hope that helps you. John Maxwell's teachings are very good, and many of them are taken and used in workplaces to transform workplaces. And his teachings are big in America, and he's a best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author. So I'm very privileged that my friend from high school got me into this John Maxwell, and that's what friends are for. She obviously saw something in me that she felt this would help me and help others, and I hope Jo's soul is resting in peace. I'm sure she's watching over me, and I'm sure she's proud of me for sharing what I've learned and what I'm learning with others. And yeah, it's those childhood friends that will always be there, and we'll always help each other.